I am Pastor Mariah, and I bring greetings to the people of Church of Peace United Church of Christ and to the people of Two Rivers United Methodist Church. It is a joy for me to bring the message to both congregations. Now today I am preaching for you on Sunday, November the 8th, but I've got to tell you, I'm actually recording this sermon before November the 8th. It is even before November the 3rd, which means when you are hearing this, I don't know how the world is doing. I don't know how you are doing. I do know there is a promise in our story that we are all going to need on November 8th and beyond. So just like I am speaking to you as a voice from the past, why don't we run with this and take it even further and join me, say about 2,600 years ago, give or take. Now what happened was the Babylonian military invaded Judah. The troops uprooted the Jewish people, forcing them to resettle and live in exile. And now let's say decades have passed and the exile is over and some families have started to return. Let's say that Mary was a young woman who remembered her family moving back to this region when she was just a little girl. She remembers hearing her parents complain about the struggle of coming home, but this always sounded kind of out of tune to Mary, right? Because as much as this might have been their homeland and their parents' home, this wasn't really hers. Not yet. And it could be her faith was like that too. Well, one night, the neighbors had come over for dinner, and Mary's house was just brimming with people. It was that moment after the meal when the little ones had disappeared on their own, and the old ones were refilling their glasses, and well, one of the neighbors pushed back in his chair. "Oh, you have got to hear this story." And that's when he dropped a first sentence that shocked everyone. "The word of the Lord came to Jonah, son of Amittai. Go at once to Nineveh, that great city, and cry out against it, for their wickedness has come up before me." Good thing the children weren't in the room. He just said Nineveh. And now everybody knows. Nineveh is the Nazis making the Jewish people line up against the wall. Nineveh is the Klan shaking a bus, then busting inside and dragging a man off the bus. Nineveh is the terrorist group making an execution video and then laughing into the camera. The room is silent. The Lord sent Jonah to Nineveh, but it's okay, you can relax, said the storyteller. Obviously Jonah didn't go. Who would? So Jonah ran as far away from God as he could. He boarded a ship sailing to the other side of the world, and then he went down and hid in the hold of the ship. Mary is hearing this and starts to relax a little bit, and she finds herself rooting for Jonah, the same way you cheer for a kid in the class who protests getting homework on Friday. Now you know that kid is saying out loud what everybody in the room is thinking, but clearly it is not going to end well for him. And sure enough, the Lord sends a storm upon the sea, so the Gentile sailors realize they have gotten themselves in the middle of something terrible. Something in Jonah already knows that something is wrong. You have got to throw me into the sea, he tells them. And the sailors say, no, we'll just row harder. But that doesn't work. They throw Jonah headfirst off the ship into the chaos, and God sends a fish to swallow Jonah whole. Once Mary heard that, she started wondering, did God send the storm and the fish in order to punish Jonah for running away? Or did God send the storm and the fish in order to set up a scene where God could rescue Jonah? Mary didn't mean to wonder this, but she did. And once she did, she realized she's actually been carrying this question her whole life. It's not just the storm and the fish and Jonah, it's the exile. It's the cruelty of the agents who kidnapped the people and then mocked them. It's the child who died on the way. Is God doing this to punish us for our sin, or is God doing this to rescue us? And Mary's question is so important because you and I know we ask this too. Usually on the worst night. Here is the thing I wish I could tell you, and I wish I could speak 2,600 years into the past and tell this to Mary. If your question goes, is God doing this thing in order to punish me or in order to rescue me? That is not God. If someone is doing something to you and you can't tell whether they're doing this to punish you or to rescue you, what they're doing is abuse. That is abuse. And the truth is, something in us already knows that. From the belly of the fish, Jonah issues a prayer that is trying way too hard to say the right words. I have said prayers like that before. The fish can't even handle it, so she throws up Jonah. And before he can even wipe off her fish vomit, God says to Jonah, "Go to Nineveh and tell them what I'm going to do." And this time, Jonah goes. Jonah begins walking across Nineveh, shouting God's plan to destroy them. And everybody in the room knows Nineveh is the Nazis marching across Charlottesville. Nineveh is the paperwork issued to a family at the border whose child has been taken. Nineveh is the pretty girl in the cafeteria who thinks it's hilarious to make fun of the kid whose dad is in prison. Well, the storyteller kind of leans back in his chair and rests his hands on his belly. What happened was that Nineveh heard Jonah, and something in Nineveh knew. They knew he was right. So the whole city repented. The king issued a decree. Even the babies got dressed in sackcloth. They put sackcloth on their cows. Even the dogs of the city began howling in sorrow. The whole city cried out to the Lord, hoping he would change his mind. And you want to know what? God did. When Mary heard that, she felt a rage flash through her chest. You would think Jonah would be furious with the Lord, and you would be right. You would think Jonah would be shocked and would say to God, "Seriously, how could you forgive them? How could you do this?" But oh, my friends, What Jonah says is so much worse. "O Lord," said Jonah with tears prickling in his eyes, "I knew you would do this. You are gracious and merciful, slow to anger and abounding in steadfast love, and I knew you would do this." And the truth is, something in us already knows this too. Once Miri hears what Jonah says, she realizes this whole time she's been trying to figure out whether God is out to punish the people or rescue the people, when either option is a problem. And what kind of God is this? Miri realizes this whole time she has been angry with God. Now, around the table, people are chuckling and kind of shaking their heads like Jonah is a silly child who is throwing a tantrum. That Jonah. But Miri thinks maybe Jonah is her hero. So she's had enough of this story. Surely there is a happy ending on the way and a moral to the story, and no thank you, she doesn't need that. So Miri stands up and begins collecting the cups off the table. But it was too late. Already the story had gotten to her. And as she was in the other room getting water, she dreamed up the most chilling outcome. You know that thing where you kind of try to scare yourself just to see what you can come up with? Well, everybody knows that God is going to forgive Jonah. There's no twist there. But what if? What if Jonah forgives God? Now, he really doesn't. I mean, at least that's not in the story if you read the book. But that possibility finds its way into Miri's imagination, and now it won't stop haunting her. Surely Jonah has some compassion in his heart. I mean, that's why he is outraged on behalf of all the people who suffered the violence of Nineveh. What if he does it? What if Jonah forgives God? Well, anyway, I never would, Miri tells herself. I mean, probably not. And as she's drying her hands, she hears a whimpering at the door. But that's really nothing new. A whole romp of street dogs routinely patrolled the street outside. One of them was always whining at the door. If you were to open it, you would be faced with the most pitiful puppy dog eyes appealing directly to the soul of your soul. So usually Miri could ignore them and they'd just go away. But tonight, her mind is wrapped up with Jonah. So without even realizing what she's doing, Miri let the hungry dog into the house. She got a bowl of water, and once the dog lapped it up, it looked at her and then tilted its head, and the water was dripping from its furry chin. And Miri didn't mean for this to happen, but she looked at that dog and her whole heart melted. Where did this tenderness even come from? A minute ago, she was vowing that she would never forgive the Lord. And okay, we don't know whether she does. At least it's not in the story. It's just, I could make a guess, and I bet you could too. Here's the thing. I don't know what has happened in the world in the past couple of days. I don't know how the world is doing. I don't know how you are doing. But I know this. The mercy of God is what has the power to get all of our Ninevehs to fall down weeping. to get all of our Jonahs to consider forgiveness, to get all of the Muris to let the dog in the house. In case nobody has warned you, somebody should. You have this tender mercy in your own heart, and I do too. So whatever is happening in the world right now, I can promise you this: your compassion is needed. If it's going to be up to us to dismantle oppression and confront evil and end violence and support those who are vulnerable, and you and I know it is exactly up to us to do this, then we are going to need the mercy you are harboring in your own heart. The world is desperate for it. And it could be there is something in us that already knows this. Amen. Amen.